I should have walked away the moment I saw the rust on the gates. The hospital stood at the edge of the city, sealed off for decades. People said it was full of asbestos, broken glass, maybe squatters. No one mentioned the children's ward, at least not directly. I was in my second year of med school. My classmates went to bars on Friday nights. I grabbed my camera. My small channel needed content, and I thought an old hospital would do the trick. It was risky, sure, but not impossible. I had snuck into places before. The air hit me first. Inside it smelled like wet paper, dust, and something metallic. My flashlight cut across peeling walls covered with graffiti. Empty wheelchairs blocked parts of the hall, their wheels frozen with rust. Every step echoed like the building was warning me to stop. I filmed everything, talking to the lens in a whisper. This was St. Mary's Children's Hospital, closed in the 80 seconds. They say parts of it were never cleared out. My voice shook, though I tried to sound steady. As I moved deeper, I reached the corridor marked Pediatrics. The sign was still there, letters half faded, one side hanging loose. My chest tightened. I told myself it was only nerves. Hospitals had always unsettled me, even when I trained in modern wards. This place was worse, though. At first, the noise was faint, too faint to trust. A rattle, maybe something falling. Then it came again, sharper, like a small bell. I froze. Toys, I thought. The sound reminded me of those plastic rattles babies shake. I spun the camera around, but the hallway was empty. I forced a laugh for the recording. Guess the wind plays tricks. But there was no wind. The air was heavy and unmoving. I pushed on. Every door I passed led into rooms with cracked tiles, broken beds, scattered paperwork. Some walls still had childish murals, cartoon suns, stick figures, bright flowers, but all were fading, eaten by mold. That was when I heard it, laughter, high-pitched, several voices at once, overlapping, then cutting off. My throat went dry. "Hello." My voice came out louder than I intended, bouncing back from the walls. No answer. I lifted the camera higher. Through the screen for a second I saw them. Shadows. Thin shapes, childlike, grouped at the end of the corridor. They wore gowns, pale and loose, like hospital uniforms. One lifted a hand. My heart pounded so hard I almost dropped the camera. I turned fast, aiming the flashlight. Nothing. Just the hallway, stretching silent and empty. I checked the footage. The figures had been there. Brief, grainy, but real. My hands trembled as I held the camera close. I whispered into the mic, "This isn't possible." I wanted to leave, but curiosity kept pulling me. Every instinct screamed to turn back, yet my legs moved forward. Another room opened to the left. Inside, I saw toys scattered on the floor, yellowed and brittle. A small rocking horse faced the corner, its surface cracked, one eye missing. The moment I stepped inside, the rattle sounded again, louder. Then the laughter returned, closer this time. Children giggling, whispering words I couldn't make out. I felt pressure in my ears, like they were right beside me. I spun. Nothing. The room was empty. But in the camera's screen, for a split second, they stood there, 4 or 5 of them, pale faces, dark hollow eyes, staring at me. I dropped the camera down, forcing myself to look directly. The room was bare, no one, only the rocking horse, now slowly moving back and forth as if someone had just climbed off. My skin crawled. I backed out into the hall, breathing hard. I tried to rationalize. Maybe squatter kids, maybe another explorer messing with me. But none of them could disappear between blinks. I muttered to myself, "Get the footage, then leave." That's it. I aimed the camera behind me as I walked, filming my retreat. Through the screen, I saw them again, a cluster of small figures in white gowns, standing still, watching, their faces blurred like bad reception, but their heads tilted in unison. I swallowed hard and whipped around, empty, always empty. The exit was close, just down the main stairwell. Relief rushed over me when I saw the doorway at the far end. My boots crunched over broken tiles as I hurried, not caring about the noise. I reached for the heavy door, pulled, nothing. It didn't move. I yanked again, harder. The handle rattled but refused to budge. Panic rose in my throat. This was the same door I entered through. It shouldn't be locked. Then I heard it, my name. Whispered, soft, carried from every direction at once. High voices, dozens of them. Some sounded amused, some almost singing. Eli. The air froze in my lungs. The voices rose again, overlapping, playful yet sharp. Eli, stay. The camera shook in my hands. My chest tightened as the whispers echoed through the stairwell. The way they said my name was wrong, too drawn out, like they were learning how to form it for the first time. I slammed my shoulder against the door, metal rattling in its frame. Nothing. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. The camera kept rolling, every shake in my hand captured in grainy detail. Behind me, something scraped along the floor. I spun. The hallway was empty, but the sound continued, like dozens of small feet shuffling across tile. I aimed the flashlight down the corridor. At the edge of the beam, the rocking horse slid into view, moving by itself into the middle of the hall. I froze. My breath came in short bursts. The horse stopped, then slowly it tipped forward and backward, creaking with each motion. The whispers grew louder. Eli, play with us. I backed toward the exit, pressing both palms against the locked door. My heart raced. I told myself it was a prank, that someone had hacked the place with speakers, but deep down I knew no one was here, no one alive. I turned the camera on myself, my own pale face staring back. My voice trembled. If anyone finds this, I'm inside St. Mary's. The door is blocked. I'm not alone here. A giggle echoed above me. I jerked the light upward. On the second-floor landing, shadows leaned over the railing. Small, child-sized figures. Their heads tilted, watching. I bolted sideways into another hallway, lungs burning. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to move. I shoved through a half-open door and stumbled into what had once been a playroom. Broken shelves lined the walls, filled with stuffed animals coated in gray dust. The smell was worse here. Damp fabric, mold, something sour. I gagged, covering my mouth with my sleeve. The camera caught movement. I lifted it. Through the screen, every toy had shifted. Stuffed bears and rabbits now sat upright, all facing me. Their glass eyes glinted in the beam. I lowered the camera. Empty shelves. Nothing. A cold draft swept across my neck. I spun, expecting to see a broken window, but the glass was intact. That was when I felt its small fingers brushing against my hand. I yanked back with a cry. No one. Only the toys, motionless. The laughter burst out again, surrounding me, bouncing from wall to wall. Not cheerful, not natural. Mocking. I ran. My boots pounded down the corridor. Every step seemed to echo alongside lighter steps, a crowd running with me though nothing was there. I turned into another stairwell, taking the stairs two at a time. My flashlight beam caught faded murals on the walls, children holding balloons, painted suns smiling. Their eyes had peeled away with the paint, leaving blank white ovals. On the landing, I stopped. Through the camera, I saw the children, dozens of them lining the walls, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their gowns were too big, hanging loose, stained in places I didn't want to identify. Their faces were pale smudges, blurred like the footage was corrupted. They all faced me. I forced myself to lower the camera, and the stairwell was empty. My stomach twisted. The whispers returned closer, circling. Don't go, Eli. Stay here. Something tugged at my backpack strap, yanking me backward. I swung around, flashlight shaking. No one. The strap hung loose. I screamed at the empty air. What do you want? For the first time, the voices answered in unison. You. I staggered back, hitting the wall. The beam of my light darted across the floor, catching dozens of small footprints appearing in the dust, forming fresh, wetted impressions, as if invisible feet pressed down one after another. They were coming toward me. I bolted again, not caring about direction, just searching for another exit. I burst into what must have been the ward itself, a long room lined with rows of tiny rusted beds. The sheets were gone, only bare frames remained, squealing as the air shifted around them. The moment I entered, every bed rattled at once. The sound was deafening, a chorus of metal clanging. The whispers layered over it, a storm of voices calling, laughing, singing my name in fragments. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound came from inside my skull. I dropped to my knees, screaming back, "Stop!" Silence. The room went still. Then, one by one, the beds creaked as if unseen weight pressed down. I stared through the camera. Children lay in them now. Small bodies under sheets, pale faces staring upward with open eyes. None blinked. My heart hammered. I lowered the camera. The beds were empty. I couldn't breathe. Somewhere behind me, the door slammed shut. I spun, racing toward it, slamming my shoulder against the wood. Locked. Always locked. The whispers returned, softer now, almost tender. "Don't leave us, Eli. We've been waiting." My camera caught movement again. I lifted it with trembling hands. They were there, filling the ward. Every bed, every corner. Dozens of children, pale silhouettes in gowns. They stood, moving closer, step by step, surrounding me. I dropped the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room except for the faint glow of the camera screen. Faces leaned toward me, mouths opened. The whispers turned into a single sound. My name, over and over. The camera tumbled to the floor, the screen tilted upward. It recorded the last thing I saw before I closed my eyes. Dozens of small hands reaching for me. I never believed the fire took everything. People said my cousin Peter died along with the rest of the patients that night, but something about the story never fit. The hospital burned too fast, the official report too clean, the questions left unanswered. For years, I tried to ignore the gnawing thought that maybe he was still there in some way, waiting for me to find him. Last week, I finally gave in. I drove to the outskirts of town where the burned-out hospital still stands, fenced off and forgotten. The blackened skeleton of the building rose against the night sky, windows hollow and broken like empty eyes. The police tape was long gone, the warning signs faded, no one cared anymore. I parked 100 meters away and cut the engine. The silence felt heavier than I expected, pressing against my ears. When I stepped onto the cracked pavement, the smell of smoke lingered, faint but unmistakable even after all these years. I carried only a flashlight and a small recorder. The air grew colder as I approached the main entrance. Rusted doors leaned open, their hinges warped. I hesitated before crossing the threshold. Once I did, it felt like the air changed, thick with something rotten, something human. The lobby was a graveyard of melted tiles and scorched walls. My boots crunched over debris. I lifted the flashlight, its beam cutting through clouds of dust. The silence broke. Somewhere deep inside, a faint sound rose. At first, I thought it was wind passing through shattered corridors, but the longer I listened, the more certain I became. It was not wind. It was screaming. A sharp, piercing cry echoed through the blackened hallways, joined by others that swelled and overlapped, as if dozens of unseen mouths had never stopped screaming since the night of the fire. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and I gripped the flashlight tighter. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run back to the car, but my legs carried me forward instead. The sound led me down a hallway where the fire had left nothing but charred skeletons of doors. Paint bubbled on the walls like dried blisters. The air smelled of something stronger now, something sickening. Burned flesh. I gagged and pulled my shirt over my mouth, but the stench clung to the air. It was impossible to ignore. As I moved deeper, the cries grew louder. They were not random. Some voices shouted for help. Others screamed in agony. One repeated the same words over and over, but I could not yet make them out. I stopped at the entrance of what must have been a ward. My flashlight beam shook as it swept across the room, and then I saw them, figures, dozens of them. They stood among the rubble, their bodies stripped of skin, raw muscle glistening in the dim light. Their eyeless faces turned toward me in unison. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My mind fought to deny what I saw, to insist these were burned mannequins, hallucinations, anything but real. But when the nearest one stepped forward and raised its hand toward me, I saw the tremble of its fingers, the torn sinew, the desperation in its faceless movement. The voice came from everywhere at once, layered over the screaming. "Help us!" Another figure lurched closer, both arms outstretched. Its jaw hung open, teeth exposed without lips to cover them. The word repeated again, louder, "Help us!" The others joined in, a chorus of ruined throats begging me to save them. My light darted across their forms. Each figure bore the marks of fire. Some were twisted as if frozen mid-struggle. Some still burned faintly, their flesh smoldering, though no flames touched them. I backed away, but the room seemed to stretch. The hallway I had come from felt farther with every step. My pulse hammered in my ears. One of the figures collapsed to its knees in front of me, arms reaching higher, as if begging a god that never answered. Its raw mouth moved. This time the word was different. It spoke my name, the sound of it ripped through me, my legs locked in place. None of these things should know me, yet the way it said my name was not random. It was familiar, broken, but recognizable. I forced the flashlight onto its face, though every part of me screamed not to. The torn figure looked back. It did not have eyes, yet somehow it stared straight at me. My throat went dry as the burned figure whispered my name again. The voice cracked, but I recognized it. I had heard it at family gatherings, in late-night calls, in laughter that felt too far away now. "Peter," I said, the word trembling out of me before I could stop it. The figure twitched as if the sound struck something deep inside. Then it lifted its arms higher, reaching for me. The others fell silent. Every ruined body froze, as if waiting for my next move. I wanted to run. I wanted to drop the flashlight and bolt through the hallway, out into the cold night air. But my legs refused. The room had become a prison, and my cousin stood at the center of it. He staggered forward, his body jerking like a puppet dragged by invisible strings. His skinless hands trembled as he reached toward me. When he tried to speak again, only a dry rasp came out. But it was enough. "Stay." I shook my head violently. "No, I came to find out what happened to you. That's it. I can't stay here." The air around me grew hotter. My flashlight flickered, dimmed, then surged brighter as if something pressed against the batteries. Shadows on the walls worked into shapes that writhed and twisted, faceless and sharp. The other figures moved again, closing in slowly. "Stay," Peter croaked louder. I stumbled back, but the doorway was no longer visible. The corridor had vanished, swallowed by the black. I spun around, but the way out was gone. Only the burned ward existed, stretching endlessly, filled with the stench of smoke and rot. Panic clawed at me. I raised the recorder in my other hand, pressing the button with the shaking thumb. If anyone finds this, I think the fire never ended. They're still here, all of them. The figures moaned as if the sound of my voice fed them. They pressed closer, their fleshless bodies brushing against each other, their fingers twitching in the air. Peter's ruined face tilted toward me. He stepped so close that the heat radiating from his charred body singed my clothes. His mouth opened wider. "You left me," he whispered. The accusation cut deeper than any wound. My knees weakened. Memories I had buried surged back, how I had ignored his calls that week, how I had promised to visit and never did. Guilt struck me harder than the stench, harder than the screams. "I didn't know," I said, my voice breaking. "I didn't know you were trapped here." The figures cried out all at once. The sound tore through the air like fire rushing through dry wood. My flashlight exploded in my hand, plunging everything into darkness. And still I saw them, not with my eyes, but in my mind. Every patient who had died in the fire stood around me, their burned faces twisted in endless agony. They had been screaming for decades, waiting for someone to hear them. At the center, Peter reached out again. His touch grazed my chest, and I felt fire spread beneath my skin, searing hot. I dropped the recorder. It hit the floor with a hollow crack, still capturing every sound. My voice, my gasps, the roar of flames that were not real but burned all the same. Peter's voice rose above the others. "You belong with us." I fought, clawing backward, desperate to break free. My shoes slipped on ash, my lungs filled with smoke that wasn't there. The heat was unbearable, but the ward had no exit. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed everything was Peter's face, burned beyond recognition, yet still carrying the faint trace of the cousin I once knew. His mouth moved one final time. Forever. The recorder was found days later in the rubble. The tape inside was warped, but one part remained clear, a voice whispering a single name again and again. My name. It started as a dare, a stupid challenge that none of us should have accepted. We were at the edge of town, staring at the old, abandoned building everyone whispered about. No one had been inside for decades, but rumors said the basement had once been used for something dark. We laughed it off at first, joking about ghosts and illegal experiments. I shouldn't have laughed. We found the basement door hidden behind a pile of rotting crates. It creaked like it hadn't moved in years when we forced it open. The smell hit us immediately: metal, decay, and something else, sharp and wet. My flashlight cut through the black, revealing a table rusted with age, instruments scattered around, and jars lined with cloudy liquid. Old papers were tacked to the walls, handwritten notes detailing procedures that shouldn't exist. Then we heard it, the first sound that made my blood run cold. A metallic clang, like a tray hitting the floor, followed by a low groan. At first, we thought it was the building settling. Then we realized it wasn't just settling. The groans were coming from the room beyond the table, a faint, agonized rhythm. Maya stepped closer, her curiosity stronger than fear. She touched a scalpel that had fallen on the floor, the metal cold even through her gloves. "Look at this," she whispered, but her voice shook. These weren't just experiments, they were surgeries. Then came the scream. It was Liam. One moment he was crouched over a notebook, flipping through records. The next, a shriek tore through the basement. I ran toward him, but the light caught only a shadow before he vanished. The floor was slick with something dark, and the echo of his scream bounced off the stone walls. There was no trace of where he had gone, just a smear of blood and the lingering smell of iron. Panic set in. The door slammed shut behind us with the force that shook the walls. We banged on it, tried to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. And then we heard it again. The faint, deliberate sound of the scalpel scraping metal, moving closer. In the darkness, something or someone was coming for us. I grabbed Sophie's hand, and we backed against the table, trying to keep our eyes on the shadows. The notes on the wall suddenly made sense. They weren't just medical records. They were instructions, warnings, and accounts of things that were still happening. The groaning, the metallic scraping, it wasn't echoes. It was live. Someone was still performing the experiments even now, decades later. We stumbled backward, slipping on the blood streaks that coated the floor. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. The basement had no windows, only that heavy locked door. The scraping came closer, punctuated by low, guttural breaths. Sophie whispered that we should hide, but hiding meant the shadows would find us anyway. Then we saw it, Liam's flashlight flickering at the far end, abandoned. Next to it, a smear of blood led into the black. I swallowed hard, feeling bile rise. He hadn't gone anywhere on his own. Something moved in the darkness, a silhouette barely human, yet unmistakably alive. The scalpel glinted as it passed through the weak light, precise and deliberate. The air was thick, metallic, and warm. My heart hammered as I realized there was no way we would leave without confronting whatever this was. "Follow me," I hissed to Sophie. We crept along the walls, avoiding the center where the table and tools lay, trying to trace Liam's last steps. Then came another scream, closer this time. It was Liam, or what was left of him, echoing from somewhere above the concrete floor. Panic clawed at my mind, but I forced myself to focus. We found the source. A narrow passage behind a loose panel. It led to a smaller room, one I hadn't noticed at first. Inside, the walls were lined with cages, some overturned, others containing shapes that shifted and moaned. Instruments were strewn about, wet with fresh blood. And there, in the dim light, was Liam, or part of him, a mangled figure struggling as a shadow moved over him, scalpel in hand. I couldn't think. Instinct took over. I grabbed a heavy wrench from the table and swung blindly. The shadow hissed, a chilling, inhuman sound, and retreated into the darkness. Liam was gone. Only the blood remained, dripping slowly onto the floor, a grim reminder of what we had lost. Sophie and I ran toward the door, smashing it with everything we had. It finally gave way, sending us into the cold night. We didn't stop until the building was far behind us. But the sound of metal scraping, the low groans, they didn't stop in my mind. I knew the basement hadn't let us go. It had marked us. Even now I can't sleep without hearing it, the slow, steady scrape of the scalpel, the whispers of those experiments that never truly ended. And I know we'll never speak of this again, not to anyone. Some doors, once opened, refused to close.